Hello guys, welcome to a new video. We are diving into some of the toughest moral choices in the Walking Dead game. The decisions aren't just about survival, they challenge our sense of right and wrong, test our emotions, and make us think about how far we'd go for the people we care about. The game really puts us in Lee's shoes, showing how choices shape both the story and the connection to the characters. At the beginning of chapter 3, Lee and Kenny are out looking for supplies when they come across a hysterical woman screaming for help, making her situation even worse by attracting more and more walkers with her screams. Lee faces two choices: show mercy and end her suffering before things get worse, or take advantage of the distraction she's creating to gather more supplies since she's doomed anyway. But being eaten alive by walkers is a terrible way to die. Are we really that cold? On the other hand, shooting her means wasting a bullet and making even more noise. It's a really tough decision, and to be honest, that woman was quite annoying. When most of the group gets locked up by the cannibals, Larry's condition suddenly worsens and he collapses. Kenny believes he's already dead and insists that they need to smash his head before he turns, while Lily desperately argues that her father is still alive and just needs help. That's where the tough choice comes in. Do we side with Kenny or Lily? Even doing nothing is also a choice, but not a very good one. The problem is, we are not sure if Larry is actually dead. Kenny's reaction feels too extreme. He could be killing someone who still has a chance to survive, but waiting too long could be just as dangerous. Being trapped in a locked room with a huge, freshly turned walker like Larry and no weapons doesn't sound appealing either. For me, the option of doing nothing isn't even worth considering. After seeing what happens next, I believe the right choice would be to help Lily, because just before Kenny takes action, you can see Larry's mouth moving, so it looks like he's starting to come back. Plus, holding down a desperate Lily in that situation feels awful. Still, like we know from these games, no matter what we choose, Larry's fate ends up the same. These moments aren't really about changing the story outcome, but about shaping our relationships with the other characters. And since Kenny stays with Lee until the end, unlike Lily, siding with him does make sense in the long run. At one point in the game, Lily is responsible for distributing the group's food. She gets frustrated with Lee and decides to pass the difficult task to him, wanting him to understand how hard it is to divide a small amount of food that isn't enough for everyone. Now Lee has to decide who gets to eat and who goes hungry. This moment really makes you struggle with your morals. Do you give the food to the children because it feels like the right thing to do? Do you follow your emotions and feed the people you like the most? Or do you think more logically and give it to the ones who are the most useful to the group? And of course, there's always that thought of self-preservation. Should you save some for yourself? No matter what you choose, you never feel good about your decision. Lily becomes obsessed with finding the traitor who's been giving supplies to the bandits, and her paranoia spirals out of control, leading her to kill either Carly or Dog, that depends on your choices, and after that Lee has to decide whether to let her stay with the group or leave her behind. The real conflict here is that Lily wasn't as bad as her father. She has done a lot for the group, but what she did was unforgivable, and you can't help but fear that she may do something like that again. Still, abandoning her in the middle of a walker-infested area feels just as wrong. Unfortunately, like many choices in Telltale games, this decision doesn't change much. Even if you let her stay, Lily ends up leaving the group anyway a bit later. Being in a zombie apocalypse is anything but easy. The first thing that comes to mind is survival, finding food, safety, and shelter. But there's also that you don't know what happened to your friends and family. It's both sad and ironic that the group ends up taking shelter in Lee's parents' store. He never gets to see them, but learns they were dead when survivors mention removing corpses from the store. Later, when trying to get the keys to the pharmacy, Lee finds his own brother, now a walker, holding the keys. This isn't really a choice the player makes, I know. It's a decision the story forces on Lee. Still, from his perspective, it's an incredible difficult moment. He has to kill someone he loves in a brutal way just to get the keys, and save a man who would try to kill him shortly after. Duck ends up getting beaten, and when Kenny finally accepts the truth that his son is doomed, he and his wife start discussing who should be the one to end his life before he turns. Hearing this, we as Lee have the option to step in and do it ourselves, trying to be a good friend and spare them of the pain. But it's not an easy thing to do. In fact, it's one of the hardest moments in the game. Still, as heartbreaking as it is, it somehow feels even worse to let one of the parents to be the one to do that to their own child. In chapter 3, we get to decide whether to share our secrets about being a murderer and who to share it with. It's a tough choice because you don't know how they will react or who you should trust with the truth. There's the worry that no one would want a murderer in the group and that they may want to kick us out of the group. Ironically, their reactions aren't as bad as we might expect. In fact, it's usually worse if you stay silent and they discover it later. It's a powerful lesson about honesty and trust. I even have a video about it. It will appear in the suggestions by the end of this video if you are interested. In chapter 2, there are 2 moments where we can choose to kill each of the cannibal brothers or let them live. It's a tough choice because after awful things that the group have been through, it's really hard to not feel like taking revenge. On the other hand, killing them might give Clementine like a bad impression of Lee. Still, we could also consider that she needs to get used to the brutal reality of the world they now live in. Personally, I also prefer leaving the last brother alive because I feel like being eaten by walkers seems like a worse fate and Lee doesn't have to get his hands dirty. At the end of the game, we are faced with a heartbreaking choice. Tell Clementine to kill Lee or leave him and let him eventually turn. It's an incredible hard decision because no one wants to see Lee become a walker. On top of that, the thought of Clementine having to deal with a turned Lee is very sad. Seeing someone you loved dead but still alive in a twisted way and not being able to get close, it's truly awful. Leaving Lee to turn into a walker makes sense, Clementine is just a kid and having her first kill be someone she loves is far too much. As Lee himself says, it changes you. Personally, I feel this choice makes the ending more sad. It drags out the moment, letting us see Lee slowly dying while Clementine quietly leaves, making the scene even more emotional. Those were all the hard decisions that I found in the game. I would love to know if you think there's like more hard decisions in the game that I didn't talk about, or like what option would you choose of these ones that I talked in the video? I would be very curious to know. So also don't forget to leave a like to help the video reach more people and subscribe for more videos. Until next time, bye bye!